Thank you. Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett and I'm the founder and owner of TechFuse Nope, and today I'm be doing a quick overview on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a Linux distribution. Basically, it's considered to be the general purpose of Linux. It's worthwhile to take a look at, especially if you're getting into computers or just want to try something new. But one thing to note is with Linux, there's very specialized things out there that is really worthwhile. It depends on what you're doing, but you'll find the same thing with other systems. So, for example, with Windows, we obviously have regular Windows, say Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, and so on. But we also have Windows Server operating systems, and then depending on what year you're looking at, we might have a Windows Media Center operating system. And with that, you have very specialized things. Then you got a general, which is the Windows 7, Windows 8, and so on. Same thing happens with Apple stuff. But one thing to note with Linux is usually features come out on Linux first, and then years later, we're talking about 5 to 10 years later, you'll see it come on Windows. Usually that's caused by the people who's on Linux. They do a open source, and also on top of that, they're not afraid of messing up their stuff because they usually have the knowledge to fix it. But they share it with people who don't have the knowledge so they can have the same enjoyments as they do, like I do with my channel. Now, with that, at this point, if we're going to be using Ubuntu, it's a lot of people aren't going to like what I'm going to say who knows about Linux. But this is my personal opinion. It's almost on par with Windows and OS X, Apple's stuff. The reason why I'm saying that is simply that the fact is what most people do on a general day-to-day, they are probably checking their emails, maybe playing a handful of games, and that's about it. There's no real additive they can get out of Linux. Yeah, it's more secure, but I'll get into why it's not really in a few seconds. But the fact of the matter is, for an average day-to-day person that you'll find out on the street, I don't know what Linux would add to the experience. For a professional, however, that's a whole different story. Now, what I mean by the security, Linux is known to be the most secure operating system around, depending on the distribution. The fact of the matter is, with Linux, is you want to change your settings. What's your password? Oh, you want to do this? What's your password? It gets annoying very fast, and it's unfortunately not user friendly with that. It used to be worse, trust me about this. But with this, the average person is going to find a way to shut that off, which there is a few ways to do it, but they're going to find a way to shut it off, and it becomes as secure as anything else. And trust me, OS X is less secure than Windows. And I even have videos on how to find viruses on an OS X and explain to some people the reason why it's able to get a virus, and you ain't even known there's a virus until years afterwards when it's really causing some problems, and why you probably gonna have to change out the entire $1,000 basic minimum Mac because the company that you bought it from doesn't care about security like they claim to. So with this, and that's kind of a funny thing though, but with this, Linux is more secure in some aspects, but like Windows, you'll get tired of being asked what is your password every other second, and people are already tired with Windows with the thing popping up when you install something. Do you really want to install this? There's even jokes about this, and the fact of the matter is that's again another reason why OS X, Apple OS 10 is not secure. or in some portions of it's not secure versus others. But with Linux, it's the most secure because it's always asking you, do you really want to do this? These small things. But once you're into the terminal and doing some root stuff, once you're in, you're not asked repeatedly. So a lot of people, what they end up doing is going through console lines, which is too complicated for the average user. So I'm going to skip over all that type of stuff in this particular video. Now, one thing I am going to do for you is I'm going to, in the description, have a link to this. Basically, it will take you to the desktop version of Linux. I suggest you just take a look at their site. It's actually pretty good. And what you need to do is simply, before I forget all this, I almost forgot. So you see this is Windows. And guess what? This is Windows 2. This is my other screen, by the way, and what I keep looking at. But this is Windows 2. What I'm finding is when a lot of people switch operating systems, like Windows to Linux, Windows to Apple, Apple to whatever, it's because they get bored with the static, bored with the same user interface day in and day out. And they wanted something new, something to spice it up. With Apple stuff, it's a lot harder. You can still do a little bit of it, but with Windows, you can really do pretty much on par with what you got on Linux. With Linux, you can do a lot more, but what I'm getting at is most people, again, average day-to-day person, check email, maybe write a Word document, if that. I mean, how many people do you know still writes Word documents that are not in school? Obviously, in school, then it's different. Probably none. Check email, sure. Check Facebook, sure. But those are browsers. You just need a browsing interface. So you can use anything. With that, it's average person. I'll tell you the reason why they're switching one to another is because of getting bored with the same user interface. And watch my channel for ways to change how to change the overall looks of your stuff. I got mostly Windows, but I'm spread out to other things like Ubuntu and OS X over time. So anyways, the link will go to this, and what you need to do is go to desktop, take a look at stuff, go to download, and then what you need to do is take a look at LTS, long-term support. That's a stable build. The thing without LTS, that's called a beta. It's kind of not, but it's basically, in a sense, it's unstable or considered to be unstable. Even though it might be really, really, really stable, there's a chance it could be unstable. LTS is known to be pretty stable. So I'll go with that. Now, with that, depending on how you're doing everything is depending on how stuff is done. But I am going to be using VM for this, VMware. And with this, the one thing to keep in mind is what VM allows me to do is run operating systems within operating systems. So I got Windows on the outside. I'm recording on Windows. And I got VMware, which has another operating system in it. Both operating systems require resources. So we're talking about RAM, CPU, and so on. So keep that in mind when you're seeing little lags and bugs and things like this. That's why. It's because of the resource having to be taken from both. Plus, I'm recording some major heavy stuff with this. So this is Ubuntu, the newest version. And this is a simple, clean interface. And I'm just going to get to the highlights of what to look for And what you'll notice, and from here maybe you'll get a good grasp on if you like it or not. And you can dual boot, by the way. That's a big thing. You can actually dual boot, so you can keep Windows or whatever on your system and then run Ubuntu on the side. The problem with this, there is a negative. You're going to have to restart to switch operating systems, where VM, I'm able to pop up VM and just go in. But again, the negative is it shares resources between both of them. Then the thing with Ubuntu is they have a try feature. So if you go in there and read from USB or read from CD at boot, basically you can actually do a try feature and it will just try it out. So with this going in here, the very top area, basically this shows you the icons and notifications. And we got, say for example, the internets, Bluetooth, the sound, time, and settings. And you can get other things going across. You can change the looks and everything. Like I said before, it's kind of like a lot like you'll see on other operating systems, but for the most part, the notifications will be displayed on top. Plus, on top of that, the menu, depending on your settings, the menu will be on top, and it'll be usually on the left side. On the left side, the furthest left side, we have what on Windows we'll be calling a taskbar. On Apple, it'll be called a dock, which will be on the bottom. And basically with this is we have a start button, which shows the applications and stuff. And then we got the like file, Firefox, and so on that we can go on with. So with here, if we click the start button, you may see something like this. I'll come back to that in a bit, but that's where the start button is, and that's the icon, and that's the Ubuntu icon, by the way. So let's go into the settings. So click on the gear and go down to the system settings. And what this does is this gets into the control panel or the settings for the operating system. You may be saying, okay, this looks a lot like the Apple settings, and you might even be jumping to blame and then ripping it off. The truth is Apple actually ripped this stuff off years and years and years back, so figure that. But with that, what we have here is the settings. The biggest thing I'll tell you to go for is in the security and privacy. Go to the search. On your version of Ubuntu, I think 16 point something is supposed to be automatically turned off by default, but either case it's worthwhile checking to check to see if it's off or on. If it's on, what would happen is if you go to settings, the start, and go to the search, and let's type in BRA for the disk burner, what would end up happening is, normally if I don't know if the network's right or not, but what would end up happening, or what should end up happening, is it will connect to the internet and search on Amazon for brawls. So yeah. But anyways, I've done some modifications on that so it wouldn't show up at all. But what you need to do here is just turn that off, and that way you can make sure that you have that extra layer of security. And that's just a bonus when it comes to Ubuntu. But keep in mind that it's worthwhile to check that. Another thing is if you go into the software and updates and go through there, you can actually say for the update settings, it's worthwhile going through that to make sure everything is good. So from here, what you need to do is go to updates, and then if you're wanting a stable build, make sure it says for long-term support version. Rest of stuff, make sure it's like you need, and for this, make sure pre-release is unchecked. You will need to go into the drivers and check all that. I'm running in the VM, so it's not a problem. But back in the day, this was much bigger problem. Basically, what would end up happening is you can't even get on the internet because guess what? You don't have a driver for the Wi-Fi card. And I remember back in the day, back when I was in high school dealing with Linux, I actually had to buy a driver, not a driver, but a card from Walmart. Make sure it was capable with Linux and had all the stuff, so it's plug-in ready for Linux. Plug it in and be able to get on the internet, because I didn't know before I put Linux on it and replaced my main operating system that guess what, I was going to be screwed because there was no way for me to go on the internet to get the proper drivers. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind, is make sure that you got proper drivers. Now again, this is becoming less and less of an issue as time goes on, but it's still something seriously to take a look at. Some other things to take a look at here is the basics, display appearance. Let's go into that real quick because this is a pretty cool thing in Linux. So what they have is every so often the background changes, and this was started in Linux before the other two, but the background changes. So this little clock icon, that means that the background changes every so often, and it's by some set pictures. It's actually pretty good stuff too. Now with that, let's click out of that. Again, over here, what we have is the it's basically like the taskbar on the Windows or dock. And what we need to do is go to this, and basically this is a Ubuntu store. This is kind of like the App Store for Apple or Windows 10, Windows Store for Windows. And here it's just a basic of here's some stuff, you can download it. Some of it's free, some of it's paid, and the library is being built constantly. Now beyond there, most everything else is pretty much the same, so there's not much to add. Before I head off, the one thing to add is with the start. If you click on that, you'll see up here on the search area what this is about, what this given stuff is. So if you want apps only, you can click that and get your apps. And the important thing to note is the reason why Ubuntu again made the search for online stuff is so Ubuntu would be able to get some money, because again, it's a free operating system, and it's just a way for them to get a kickback in case if you click on any of the links. What you need to do is go to the Amazon, and if you buy through that, Ubuntu gets like a 10% or so kickback from whatever you buy. So if you paid $100, Ubuntu gets $10 out of that, or whatever our agreement is. Mine was about 10% from Amazon when I was doing it. Unfortunately, I moved to a state with Nexus laws. I talked to the politicians, the governor here, and so we'll see. But with that, that's a huge thing to keep in mind, and that's the thing to keep things approved. Again, check the additional drivers. Can't emphasize that enough. But so yeah, if you go on here, you can go down here and you can actually see what each one of these are supposed to be. So it's a pretty simple thing. Let's click out that. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. Everything else is like almost any other operating system. You can do certain things, like say for example, let's log out. And I've already put GNOME on here, so let's take a look at this real quick. If you look up GNOME, it starts with a G. It's G silent, and for those of you who don't know properly, that's what it's called. And you just installed a shell, the tweak tool, and let's log out real quick. And what would end up happening is when it does log out, remember sharing resources, so it's taking a little bit longer to if you're doing it straight on a computer without a VM, then it will be much faster. But basically what happens is, looks like it's want to cooperate. You can get an interface like this. The interface may look different depending on how you set things up, but if you select on the thing and go to this wheel thing, you can actually go and see a GNOME shell. So if we log into that real quick, you can see that you'll massively change the interface. I didn't log into this one yet, so I don't know what the newest version looks like. But basically, you can get a massive change. So you can have a different shell per day of the week. So things are slightly different here. Not much, but you can go here and tweak some massive and do some cool things. There's plugins for GNOME, which is awesome, and I've used it all the times. So going into the activities, you can see that we got the virtual desktops on the side. We got this over here. We got our apps in the middle. And this is the interface I love to use. I don't think I can find it. I'm gonna see if I can find some third-party solution to make Windows like this, because I love this. And I've even advised Windows to have this thing with the your screen on your side, since mirrored it probably on that side, but it's the virtual desktop thing. So with that, it's pretty awesome. You can get some pretty advanced settings. So let's go to the tweak tools. Wait a second or two. And keep in mind, you can download a lot of this stuff through the terminal, but for the most part, I advise just going through the store. It's easier to deal with, less room to mess up. So like right here, I could turn on and off the dark theme. Deal with that. So if I wanted network server up there, extension. So like here, if I wanted to have, say, a bunch of these, I'm gonna go down here and take a look, but you can get more extensions. This is what I was talking about with the plugins. So you can do some pretty cool things. And you can do other stuff. And just going into extensions real quick, if you, and I'm gonna leave link down below in the description, and remember to go down there, check out the link, subscribe and like while you're down there. But I'll leave a link to this, and that way you can actually take a look at all of the extensions and before you even jump in, and you can figure out what things can do. And there's a lot of modifications you can do with this, so it's worthwhile to take a look. Last thing on talk about is the, I mean, you get so much of a change. You can even change that. It's awesome. So let's go into the wherever it is. Wine is a useful tool when it comes to Linux, because sometimes you got to actually do something that requires an exe file, and these are basic things, but basically what happens is you need to run an exe file, and you got Linux, so what you need to do is run wine, which can run the exe file. Now it might not work, because I've had problems in the past with it, and it might work, but for the most part you're running a risk, and that's one of the problems with Linux. And a lot of people who do run Linux, like outside of fanboys, they will tell you that there's a lot of programs that you may use that you won't be able to use anymore because you switch an operating system. Same thing happens if you switch to Apple from Windows. You may lose a ton of functions, and it's back and forth. Like, for example, with Android and iPhone, so Android, Google, iPhone, and Android's Linux, by the way, and iPhone is Apple stuff. Apple actually didn't invent their own operating system. They tried to, horribly failed, actually almost tanked their own company because of that. And they originally stole a part of an operating system and modify it. And basically they had to go back that way because it was either losing the company or dealing with being wrong. And I'd rather be wrong than dead type of thing. So, yeah. Well, with Apple on their iPhone side, you can get Pandora, the music player. Whereas Android, you can get Pandora. You can pretty much get anything. Apple doesn't allow it because it competes against their own products. There you go. So, with this, there's restrictions switching any operating system, and that's the big thing to keep in mind. And the thing that might help you if you do want to use this as a daily driver, which I don't see any problem with, really, it's doing this. But I think most people who are on Linux do end up using Windows. Like OS X, like Apple people, they use Windows often, if not daily, very often. Same thing with Linux. You can't get away with it for one reason or another. In some careers, you might be able to, but for the most part, you can't. I know I can't because most of the stuff I use, even to make these videos and do all this stuff, are not on Linux, unfortunately. Like I would love to switch over a long time ago, but I can't because money. And eating is needed, and hunting is illegal in most cases because and being homeless, you get rounded up like basically in the work camp, and that really does happen in the United States. So with that, if you got any questions or anything, then let me know about this. And if you want to add any more information, because there's a lot of people who know well more than I do on this subject, if you have any questions, leave them down below, and hopefully if I don't know them, someone else will be able to answer you. But if you want to add more information to this or have a difference in opinion on something, cool, leave it down there in the comment section and I'll check it out. But anyways, with that in mind, this has been Craig Bennett, founder and owner of Tech Review Snope. Leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll check you on the next video, and hope you have a great day.